Hello, everyone. Welcome to Childhood Potential, an online Montessori conference. We have gathered people from all around the world to share with us their knowledge and experiences related to Montessori pedagogy. I am Paulina Dominguez, and today I'm here with Dr. Poonam Bhatia. Let me tell you about Dr. Poonam because she's really an exceptional woman. Dr. Poonam has dedicated her life to Montessori education as a parent, a teacher, and teacher educator. She has consulted schools in different places like India, Malaysia, Singapore, the US, and to help them achieve the highest Montessori standards. And after consulting with teachers, schools in different places, now she's the proud owner of a Montessori school in Denver, Colorado. Is that correct, Dr. Poonam?
You got it right. Thank you.
Good. And not only that, but today she's here to share with us her amazing experience because Dr. Poonam decided to follow Maria's Montessori steps throughout her life, and she has wonderful stories. So let me ask you something, Dr. Poonam. How did you decide to start this journey? How did you came up with this amazing experience and adventure?
Well, first of all, thank you, Paulina, for having me here and for giving me an opportunity to discuss my travels and to talk Montessori, which is my number one favorite thing to do. Um, but to answer your question about how did I decide upon this journey, I don't know if you will believe me, but this was not a planned journey. None of it was. It was very spontaneous, and it grew as I grew as a Montessorian. So can I bring up some slides to share with you?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the purpose of my journey was to see how this method of education that focuses on the child develops. What were Maria Montessori's experiences that influenced her and how she viewed the child? And what was her driving force? In order to understand this better, I followed her footsteps around the world. But this was not all. I was saddened by the fact that many specifics about Montessori's life were getting muddled and that photographs were being incorrectly captioned and so many details were being lost and distorted. For instance, we hear many, many times that Montessori was the first woman doctor in Italy. You hear this over and over again. Now, the fact is that she was not the first woman doctor in Italy. She was one of the first women doctors. And Paulina, you will agree with me that that in itself is a big achievement.
Definitely. Yes.
To give you another example, there is a photo of a casa, let me bring it up, that is always ascribed as being the first Casa di Bambini. And this photo always has the caption that this is the inauguration ceremony that is being held at the first Casa di Bambini. After visiting the first casa in San Lorenzo, I looked at this photograph over and over again to try to see how, where was the similarities? Because the steps sorry. Let me go back here. So the steps, for example, here, these are different in the first casa. The building behind is different in the first casa. So I just couldn't understand how this photograph could be of the first Casa di Bambini. And it was only when I visited the third Casa di Bambini in Milan that I understood that this picture was really from the inauguration ceremony that was held in the third casa. And you will see the pictures in my book, and you will see what I'm talking about, how the building at the back is the same, how the steps are still all the same. So we cannot afford to make these mistakes. We have a legacy to protect, and we must do this diligently. You are right, though. This was a very exciting adventure with lots of experiences that I would not trade for anything in the world.
That sounds really wonderful. But let me ask you something. How long did it take you to complete this journey?
By the time I was all done, it was 13 years. So I started in 2006 and I was done in 2019. And you know what? I'm so grateful that it got done when it did because, with COVID now impacting all of our lives and our travels, I'm not sure when we will be able to travel freely like that again. So it was done, I would say, in the nick of time.
Well, 13 years is a lot, but yeah.
It is. Yeah, it is.
So, where did the journey start and why there?
My journey began in Rome with the first Casa di Bambini. There's no reason really because it was never planned to be a book. It was never planned as such that I was going to follow her footsteps wherever she had gone. But it was the summer of 2006, and I was traveling in Rome with my two children. And one day I just happened to tell them that I would like to visit the first Casa di Bambini. I know it's in San Lorenzo, but I don't know anything more than that. So they told me that if we have time after we've done all of our sightseeing in Rome, we will try to find your school. So I let it go, Paulina, because I didn't have an address. I didn't have my heart set on it because I knew it was going to be impossible to find. Um, but then imagine my surprise when on the last day of our stay in Rome, I was told at breakfast, well, you know what? We have time today, so we will find your school. I was very excited. But I just want to put it as an aside too that this was the time before Google Maps, before smartphones. This was the time of those long paper maps that you unfolded, and then to try and fold it back again was next to impossible. But when we went to our concierge and he took out one of these long maps, and I remember him so distinctly. He put on his glasses and he peered at the map. He'd really tried to find where San Lorenzo was on the map. Till eventually he shook his head and he said, I can't find it, and gesticulating away, he said that where the map ends or where this map ends, San Lorenzo begins. So I was very disappointed, of course, and I thought these children of mine will find something else to do. But luckily for me, my daughter said, don't look so disappointed. We will find it. And I started to follow the two of them out of the hotel and, past the very big Termini station in Rome and towards where the walls of what was written San Lorenzo. So we arrived over there. We arrived at San Lorenzo looking around, and now began the task of actually finding the school. And that was not easy at all, because remember, this was again 1 year before the world descended on San Lorenzo and the first Casa di Bambini, because in 2007 we celebrated the centenary of the first Casa. So then it became all very, very well known. And there is a chapter in my book about all of this visit. And I always feel, as when I look back, that this was the most special time that I visited the first casa. The first time. I've been there many, many times after that. And the last trip was last year. And I actually took an Uber to the casa.
Very different, like the experience, I'm sure.
Very different. So that's why I say, the first one was really, really special, finding it that way.
I'm sure it was. Yeah, for sure. So, how did you decide the route you took? And did you have something planned or did it just like came like, with the flow?
It just came like that. There was actually no plan. For as I mentioned before, I was not planning to write a book or even, going to every single place of her life. I started by putting the pieces together for myself to gain a deeper understanding of this philosophy and this methodology to which I had dedicated my life. As someone, though, who has lived all over the world, I know what experiences do to an individual by living in different countries, how you imbibe that culture, how your views change. And I was keen to know where Montessori had lived and how that had transformed her views of the child and also impacted her approach to teaching.
Yeah, very interesting. So, what were some of the struggles that you had while doing this?
None of it was easy. There were times that I thought I was banging my head against the wall, but not once, Paulina, did I think of contemplate to give up, and not do it anymore. I was fascinated by her journey and dedicated to finding all the places that she had gone to. So I've already mentioned to you my struggles in finding the first Casa di Bambini. And then finding the second Casa di Bambini took me actually 12 years after I had found the first Casa di Bambini. Now you've read too, and about Montessori mentioning the gardens in the second Casa di Bambini, and how every child had their own little patch that they would be responsible for taking care of, for gardening and taking care of that patch. But then there is no address anywhere. You read about the second casa, you read about the gardens, but there's no address. So I could not find where it might have been. I did so much research. I knocked on every door that was possible. I read every book that I could to try to find where this was. But it just took me nowhere. And I was at the point of really giving up when all of a sudden this happened. So I was visiting the lead teacher in the first Casa di Bambini, who is a friend of mine. And unfortunately, she got a call to say that her daughter was not well and she had to go to the hospital. So, being a perfect host and trying to make good use of my time, she said, well, while I'm gone, do you want to visit the other casa? And so I looked at her and I said, the other casa? Sure, I would like to visit the other casa. And she took me to what is the second Casa di Bambini. It was right there, right under our nose. It is in San Lorenzo. It has two entrances, and that's why there are two addresses sometimes for it. And we walked to it. All those years of trying to find this casa suddenly just melted away. The teacher there was so nice. She immediately invited her daughter to come over, and we waited for her to come. And her daughter was a student of the first Casa di Bambini. And together they showed me these beautiful gardens with the jasmine creepers and the pomegranate and all the beautiful vines that there are in the gardens. And, of course, all of Montessori's writings come alive. And remember that this is also the place where Montessori's where she talks famously about the children that came to her saying, I have written, happened. So this is the second Casa di Bambini, and it took me 12 years to find.
Oh, a long time.
A long time, but well worth it, so well worth it. Let me tell you then about two escapades that I had in India. I was in India for the Christmas holidays in the winter of 2009 when we decided to go to Madras, which is now called Chennai. And, if you remember, Montessori had been in India during the war for a long period of time. She had come here in 1939 for just 4 months is what they had planned to come for. But she was stuck here for 6 years because of the war. She could not go back. And, you read about the Alcott Bungalow, you read about the Theosophical Society. and I was keen to find it. So, right here from Denver, I called up the Theosophical Society and I asked them, if I would like to come and visit. They were very warm indeed, and they said, "Yes, yes, of course, ma'am. You come. We will show you around. Just remember to have lots of time because this is very big place, and you have to see the banyan tree." And of course, I needed to see the banyan tree, but I also wanted to see the Olcott bungalow. So I said I would like to see the Olcott bungalow too, because I am a student of Maria Montessori and she lived there for many years. So they told me that that was a problem, that I could visit the Theosophical Society, but I could not go to the Olcott bungalow because it was actually similar to what the concierge said, where, the map ends here and San Lorenzo begins there. So this gentleman told me that, that the Theosophical ends and then there is the Olcott bungalow. So this is like a private residence, and hence, we do not have access to it.
Right.
So I was very disappointed. Really wanted to go there. That was the whole point of going to see where she had lived and where the school had been. So I spoke to my father about it, and he said, "Don't worry, let me make a call." And so he made the call to the Theosophical Society, and in his manner, he found out the name of the gentleman that was living in the Orchard bungalow, and he also managed to get his telephone number. So asked him, I said, "Dad, you really going to call?" And he said, "Yes, it doesn't hurt to try." So he called and he introduced himself as saying, "My name is Mr. Jetli and I would like to speak with." And he couldn't go beyond just introducing himself because this gentleman says, "Which one?" So a little aside for this is that my father's brothers have all been in the army. So obviously the last name is the same. And this gentleman living in the Olcott bungalow was an ex-army officer. So he recognized the last name, and that's why he said, "So which Jet Li are you?" And of course, the rest of it is that he took the telephone number, my email address, and he wrote to me, and such a sweet, welcoming letter that he would introduce me to the Theosophical Society, and we must come and have coffee in the Olcott bungalow. And of course, it was a dream come true because that's exactly what happened. I was able to see where the observatory was, the famous observatory downstairs, where as well as look at the terrace. And this is the terrace. Sorry. Um, so this is the terrace where she used to walk every evening. And so that her students had told me that. So a lot of the things that I had read about came true and came alive. So that's the story of the Alcott bungalow. Now, if you remember, um, that cosmic education was founded in Kodai Canal. Montessori, the Theosophical Society was needed to be as an army base. And so the Montessorians, now known as enemy aliens, had to leave Rosebank, had to leave the Alcott bungalow. And Chennai, and also Montessori's health was failing her. So they thought that the cooler temperatures of a hill station would be better for her. And so they took Montessori up to Kodai Canal. And I had no idea where she had spent 2 years of her life in Kodai Canal. That's all I knew, was it was in this hill station. So with my parents and my daughter in tow, we drove up the hilly roads that go up to a hill station, and we arrived at Kodai Canal. I believe it was a 6-hour drive. I could be wrong about that. As soon as we arrived at the hotel and everyone else was checking in, I asked the concierge if he knew where Rosebank was. I was not wasting any time. So he said no, he did not know where Rosebank was. So I said, "Is there anybody else here that might know where it is?" I don't know if I mentioned that I got the name of Rosebank from a thesis of a student that had written her master's thesis, I believe, on Kodai Canal. And from there, I had got the name of Rosebank. So that's all I had. No address, nothing. I just knew it was Rosebank. So the concierge called the manager, and the manager said, "Yes, I know where Rosebank is." but do you have a driver? And I said, yes, I do have a driver. She says, you call him and I will explain to him. So I called the driver, and in their native language, he gave him the directions. And my driver was now all beaming and very happy because he had earlier told me we cannot find it. Um, and sure enough, we approached and we arrived at Rosebank, and I was able to go in and see this beautiful bungalow where Montessori spent with the 2 years of her life, where is the foundations of cosmic education, of elementary Montessori education, as well as infant toddler education was all laid over here. And so later on, I asked the manager, I said, how did you know where it was? And he's told me that in Kodai Canal, all the houses are known just by their names. There is no street address.
Oh,
So
nice.
it just happened. It was just very, very lucky.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah. So some of my struggles I have shared with you.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the struggles, but also like I feel like everything took you, like when everything connects and you just get there.
Yes.
It's
And then
just
suddenly it becomes worth it, right?
yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's
That's exactly what happened everywhere. It's like you're almost ready to give up, and then just something happens to make it possible.
yeah. Right.
Okay.
So, what were the five things that impacted you the most about this whole experience?
I would say everything, but bringing it down to five, I would say definitely the first Casa di Bambini. It's always a joy to go there. Um, it always is the most humbling experience to see the origins of this method. Um, so, without a doubt, the first Casa. And then I have to tell you that in those famous gardens of the second Casa di Bambini that I've been telling you about, I was drawn to this rose bush, which is at the corner of the garden. And it has a beautiful fragrant smell that brings you there. And as I was standing there, the teacher came up to me and said, this is a rose bush that we take care of a lot because Maria Montessori herself planted this rose bush. So we make sure that it is thriving. It's stories like this that make her come alive, and it makes all these journeys so worthwhile.
Definitely, yes. I was glad to see that bush.
Yeah, I just smell the roses. They're so beautiful.
That's
Um, and then, of course, visiting Chiara Valle and going into her house, her birth house, and spending time in her bedroom is, of course, amazing. And then sitting on her chair in Amsterdam. This was her birthday actually that I was there. So the staff had put flowers up, and I very asked, very hesitatingly if I could sit on her chair. And I was told that just because you asked so politely, you may do so. So it was like I was like levitating, not actually sitting on the chair. I was so nervous about it. But yes, sitting on my teacher's chair was very, very special.
oh, I'm sure.
And then this is the beautiful library at Città di Castello, where the Montessori method was written. I mean, it's gorgeous, this library. And so, yes, so I would say that these are the five things, if I had to choose, that are extremely memorable of my journey.
Wow, they are like really something. I'm enjoying this a lot.
Yeah, but just look at this with the wooden shelves and the books. I mean, it's just a beautiful library.
And I'm sure it makes like a lot of sense because like we have read books and when you're there, it's like the magic comes alive, right?
No, totally, totally.
Oh yeah. So tell us about the people you met. I'm sure like in 13 years you met a lot of people and someone like very interesting. Tell us about them.
I would say they were all very interesting. They were all very, very helpful. But to mention a few, of course, in Chennai, I would talk to you about Mr. Nachiappan, who told me a lot of personal stories about Maria Montessori. And then these are the people that I met who in the Alcott bungalow who actually took me to meet with three ladies that I will talk to you about as well, um, who were students of Maria Montessori. So, they were able to tell me like personal stories about Maria Montessori. So these were amazing people that I met. But then everyone else too, like the teachers of San Lorenzo, the people in Milan that I bothered so much. I mean, they opened up every book possible and every research document to share with me how Montessori came to Milan, and all of those stories. And of course, the gentleman in Chiaravalle who opened the Montessori's home for me on a Saturday because that was the only day that I could come. And he was so kind to be able to do that. And then, of course, there is also Phyllis Wallbank, who worked with Dr. Montessori in London. And I was very lucky to meet her as well because shortly after that, she passed away. And, her last words to me were just, keep the approach alive and, keep it focused on the child.
Yeah. Wow, that's a lot of interesting people, and I'm sure like
Lots. Lovely people.
sharing stories and everything, it will be something that I would like to do. So, how do you think this impacted you as a Montessorian?
It really, I think what it did was it helped me to understand the woman behind the method and all the trials and the tribulations that she went through. So she became more human to me, and I admired her even more, if that's at all possible, uh, because I saw a woman that never succumbed to challenges, and that if she had to start all over again, and she had to do that many, many times, she did. She never gave up. She gave me purpose, and I stay steadfast in my teacher's belief to do right by the child. There are so many times, Paulina, when we are asked to compromise. For example, you know, they will put younger children into the CASA years. They will tell you to shorten the 3 hour uninterrupted work cycle. The state will make all these rules like you can't have chokables in your classroom, or you can't have glass items in your classroom because it is very dangerous for the child, right? um, but one has to stand firm, and one has to do things so that you can keep Montessori authentic, because otherwise we're just diluting the approach and we are losing it, and that we should not do that. And for me, every day, seeing the children in my school happy and thriving, I know that it makes it worth the fight. And actually, they give me the strength to fight for them. You know, for example, too, now during this pandemic that we are all going through, her attitude has given me so much strength. She was caught in India for 6 years. I mean, we've been 9 months now in the, has it been nine or how long has it been? So if we calculate from maybe 7 months, and it seems like a long time, right? Um, you know, but her attitude towards this, she was caught in India in foreign soil, not knowing that culture, and yet how she worked, with the child and opened the school and did the training classes. She never gave up. So, wherever it might be, whether it was India or Spain or the United States, wherever it was, she stayed focused on the child. And I think that during these very rough times, I am doing that as well, drawing my inspiration from her. So, as soon as the state allowed us to open our school, we did so. They told us the children have to wear masks, we did so. We just knew that the children needed to be back in school. And we just following all the guidelines. So she does. She has had a big impact on me.
I'm sure, yes. So, what were some of the details about Maria's life that you discover? Something that people usually don't know, like people like me.
Right. So I'm thinking you're asking about personal details about her life.
Yeah.
And yes, that's what I ask anybody who's met her too. So what was she like? When did you meet her first? And, those kind of things. Um, like I showed you a picture of Mr. Nachapan earlier on. He had the task of driving Montessori around when she was living in Chennai. So he was able to tell me a few things about her. So among the things he said, like she preferred to drink lemonade to water. She liked to shop in the Great Eastern stores. And, in British India, the Great Eastern stores were the one that carried all the imported goods, so that does make sense. But he also said that she had the most beautiful hands with which she gave her presentations. And I thought that was fascinating. Um, but I have to also share one story that he told me, which I will never forget. And it just reveals the woman, the insecurities of a woman that was caught in a foreign land during the time of the Second World War, whose schools were being shut down, effigies were being burnt. And she thought that now when she comes back to Europe, there will be nothing left of her schools or of her of her books or her approach, that it'll be all gone and they would probably have to start from scratch again. So she was very, very worried about that. And Mr. Nachiappan said that he promised her that he would keep her books in print until he was alive. And he has done that. At least till I visited him, the books were in print. They are gorgeous editions of all of her textbooks. And he has kept, to his promise. So that was a very touching story for me. Um, but then those three ladies that I met, what happened there was that one of them, we were just taken into this car without being told where we were going and everything. And we arrived at this house, and there were three women that were just coincidentally sitting over there and having coffee. And I was introduced as somebody that wanted information on Montessori. And they were delighted to share their stories. They had all been in that observatory in the Alcott bungalow in the school that Montessori was teaching in. They had waved flags when she arrived into the country. So they told me about that. But they also told me, one of them told me, Madam had a very bad temper. So I said, tell me more. And she said, one day when she was giving a lesson, I had to go and give her a glass of water. So I went and I put the glass of water on the table. And I turned around and was walking away when I saw that Madam took her hand like this and threw the glass of water on the floor. I was so scared, she said. I didn't know what I had done wrong. And so later on, Madam told her that, why don't you come to me in the evening and I will explain to you. And so Montessori explained to her that when she was giving a lesson or she was lecturing, she had a certain sequence that helped her to concentrate. And so if something was done that was out of the ordinary, she could not concentrate. So what this young girl had done was that she had brought the glass of water without the lace doily to cover the glass.
Oh.
And so this girl said, it was so nice of her. She didn't have to explain to me what I had done wrong, but it was so nice, and I never made that mistake again. So it just, again, the human comes up in all of this. Another one of them told me that she caught Montessori speaking in English one day, a little bit of English. And she said, so you know English? And Montessori says, only know Italian, very convenient. She said with a twinkle in her eye, only know Italian, so convenient. So that was really very funny. But of course, as they kept talking and suddenly they had forgotten that I was there and they were just talking amongst themselves. And obviously they all had a crush on Mario. because Mario was the best math teacher. Do you know how well they did in the math exam? It was only because of Mario. He was taught them so well. And then about these timelines that they unrolled, and how there was, it was more than a furlong. It went all the way up to the gate. I mean, they were like giddy schoolgirls talking about all of this. So it was so sweet. But the one thing that they all talked about, and including Phyllis Wallbank in England, is that the one thing that Montessori had was that she was totally focused on the child. And she allowed nothing to come in the way of that. These three ladies told me that as well. Everybody I met just reiterated that from me.
Wow.
Were those some personal details that help you? That
Oh, I love them. Like, like when you admire someone so much and you're just like, oh, I think I have a little bit of that in me as well. I don't know. Like.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
So
So before your journey, perhaps you have some ideas about Maria and the pedagogy itself. But after like all this adventure, did some of it change, or is there anything?
I'm not sure that anything has changed. I think if anything happened, I just became more focused on my approach and became stronger in my belief that I need to do it right, that we need to keep it authentic. That's what I think I got away from all of these travels and following her footsteps. And what this happens is I had to open my own school because that's the only place that I can do what I think is the right thing to do. And in the school, I'm constantly observing the children. I am discussing my findings with my teachers, and we are reading the Montessori books over and over again as we try to make changes in meeting the needs of the children.
Right.
So I just think that my understanding of the philosophy and my belief that we need to do it right, I would say, just became stronger as a result of it.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. If we all Montessori educators were to learn something about this adventure experience that you did, what would it be?
I would say that despite circumstances, and we know that Montessori lived through the hardest of times when she had to give up everything and she had to start from scratch several times, she never gave up. She was resilient. She concentrated on her quest. And I would say that all of us should do that too. Her focus was always on the child, and that's where we should be as well. Nothing else really matters. So I would ask that all Montessori educators should continue Montessori's work to cultivate the human spirit and to stay true to the Montessori approach.
That's really beautiful. And let me ask you something else. You mentioned earlier that you have a book. Can you tell me more about it, please? I'm really very interested in on reading it and getting it and everything after listening to you.
So can I bring up a slide? Can I share the screen again?
Yes, please.
Okay, so here it is. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so this book is called The Cultivator of the Human Spirit, Revisiting Maria Montessori's Journey. It is available on the MCI Denver Square site as well as on Amazon.
Nice. I I would definitely read it and I can't wait to get it. So thank you very much, Doctor.
You're welcome. Let me stop this and get back. Yeah.
Well, this was really interesting. I'm sure like all your audience will be as happy as I was to listen to everything. And you brought that little piece of something that we're always missing because we all admire Maria Montessori, but you sharing it with us like very specific details and everything, that it's something that warms the heart of some like, like of all Montessorians for sure.
I'm so glad you found it interesting, Paulina. It's been fantastic traveling with her, writing this book, and sharing her life with people that don't know. So I appreciate an opportunity to talk to you about it. And if you have any more questions or anything, you know how to reach me.
I thank you very much, Dr. Panoma. I really appreciate everything and I enjoy my time with you. And also, I admire you a lot because maybe a lot of people have been interested in doing something similar or not, but it takes a lot of courage and time and dedication to do everything that you did, you know? So I think like that's the real worth of well, a part of all the stories that you just shared with us, but like, you know, like the real worth of everything.
Thank you.
Thank you,
God bless
Dr.
you. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and I'm sure that you're going to enjoy a lot. And if you want to contact Dr. Panam, um, I'm sure you can find her information in the speakers. So please visit her website and read her book because I'm sure that you're going to enjoy it as much as I will.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.